No stopping me. Love it. And yet, how many times in our lives do we let something stop us, right? So what we need is strength to keep going through whatever it is. And the title of my talk today is actually The Strength of Peas. It's not a typo. It is and not even my attempt at humor. To be honest with you, it was a message that came to me from my peas in my garden. I don't know how many of you garden at all or ever watch gardens. I'm seeing heads not so good. So you understand what I'm talking about here, maybe. I had never grown peas in my garden before, and this year I decided to give it a shot for the first time. In fact, it was my son, who's 7, it was his request. He really wanted peas. I said, okay, we'll do peas. So I go out and buy peas on this beautiful, sunny spring day. It was perfect days for gardening. So I go and I get these tiny little peas, little peelings. I don't know what you even call them when they're that little, right? They're not even full plants at that stage. And I got out my tomato stake and I put it around where I was going to plant them so they would have something to hold on to as they got bigger. Well, little did I know, as I was planning my little pea adventure, that there was a storm coming through that day. And as storms do around here, they get really, really windy. So I'm sitting inside watching the tree outside whip around, and I'm just thinking, my poor little peas, I just doomed them by planting them today. And so I kept going out and checking on them, and I couldn't believe it. Within, maybe 2 hours, they had started wrapping their tendrils around that little grate that was around them. It's wow, what amazing built-in strength and perseverance. The first storm ever that they encountered out in my yard, and they were okay because they had something to hang on to. And it really got me thinking of our own strength. Well, at the time I was thinking of my own strength, really. It's wow, if the peas can make it through this storm because they have this built-in system, I can make it through things in my life. And when that realization hit me, I was well, I've got to share this with people, right? If the peas can do it, we can do it, people. We can do it. So I started thinking about how does strength show up in our lives? And first thing I thought of is pure might, right? When we think of strength, we think of the muscle man, building up the muscles at the gym and building that physical strength. But I thought that's not it. And in fact, when we turn to unity teachings, and when we turn to Charles Fillmore is the first one I go to in terms of the 12 powers. For those of you who might be new to Unity, Charles Fillmore is one of the co-founders of Unity. He co-founded the movement with his wife, Myrtle. And he wrote many, many books on unity thought. And really, it's about spiritual living. And it's about living from that core of spirit that's within us, that's already there, and tapping into that. So he wrote this book, The 12 Powers of Man. And in the 12 powers, he talks about these spiritual powers that we are born with. Not that we have to develop, not that we have to go out and seek and find these magical gifts that we can then bring into our lives and into our hearts, but powers that we're born with, and strength is one of them. Strength is one of them. When he wrote about strength, though, he actually identified the chapter heading, strength, stability, steadfastness. Now, looking at that gives us a totally different perspective of what our original thought of strength might be. We might, again, think that strength, physical strength, but stability being the same as strength, steadfastness being the same as strength. And these are gifts that we're born with, right? Steadfastness, that ability to persevere no matter what happens in our lives. So when we have that dream, when we have that vision of running up the mountain, swimming in the seas, it's the power of strength, that steadfastness, the ability to persevere through it all, that allows us to complete those tasks, those missions. It's the power of strength that allows us to continue on when challenges occur in our lives, whether they're challenges as we're climbing the mountain, so to speak, or challenges in our careers, perhaps losing a job, perhaps losing a loved one. How do we get through that? How do we maintain ourselves in the middle of turbulence and challenges that life brings our ways? When the winds start rocking us like those peas, right? How do we stay the course? It's through our power of strength. In his book, The 12 Powers of Man, Charles Fillmore wrote, "The strength here discussed is not physical strength alone, but mental and spiritual strength. All strength originates in spirit." So even the physical, even the mental, right, it originates in that spiritual gift of strength. So what I learned from my peas by watching them was not only were they gifted with this innate ability of strength, of stability, right, ways of holding themselves despite the rocking winds around them, but they were also able to hold on to one another. And I thought that was fantastic because some of them wrapped their little tendrils around that tomato cage. And there was one that was up in the front, and I was like, ooh, poor little plant the whole time, because I was like, there's no cage. I didn't plant him like right next to the post. What's he gonna do? And it reached its tendrils out on both sides and held on to the plants next to it. Now, how many times in our lives do we do that, right? When something happens and something in our life starts rocking us, sometimes in unity, sometimes, one of those little faux pas, because we are so much about recognizing our inner light and our inner strength that we say, I got this. Me, God, we got this. And we forget about all these people around us who can help lift us up, who can help support us and be our stability as we're going through change, as we're moving through times of transformation, as we're moving through the winds of life. And so my peas reminded me of our community, this community, our friends, our family. And I thought, what a beautiful gift. And as the peas were hanging on to the tomato cage, I thought, well, that's almost like our rock, right? That's God right there. It's God sitting right by us, right next to us, or maybe one plant away. No, right next to us. It's part of our system that we have that we can rely on. We can turn within to prayer. We can turn to God for help when we're in those times of rockiness. I love this quote, and I was going to say it later, but I think it's perfect for right now. And this is by Frances Fulks. She's another Unity author, Unity minister, and she wrote a book called Effectual Prayer. And she wrote, until a person becomes poised and balanced in spirit, he cannot always, under great stress and strain, lift the vision alone. He may be on the way, but not yet so conscious of the indwelling Christ that he can turn to him for every need. So there may be times in our lives where we say, yes, we know that Spirit is all around us. We know that Spirit is within us, that indwelling Christ presence is there. And yet I will admit that there have been times in my life when I felt so shaken up by things around me that I felt almost that I couldn't reach out. I couldn't connect within deep enough to feel stable in the middle of those winds. And those are the times, right? At the time I thought, well, if I ask for somebody's help, it's a sign of weakness. But really, it's a sign of humbling ourselves to know that God is not just expressing through us, but God is expressing through everyone else around us. And when we are willing to say, I need help right now, I'm feeling off balance, I'm feeling blown around, and I'm not able to do this all on my own right now. And we can reach out and say, can you help me? Right? When you have a child, sometimes it is so hard to say, this is a little too much. But if we can reach out and say, I just had a baby. I could really use some home-cooked food. Like, could somebody make me a meal? Or perhaps our car isn't working and we need to get a ride, to work or something. To ask for help in those times, where things just aren't going the way we planned them. It's not a sign of weakness. It's a sign of strength. It's a sign of recognizing that the Christ light, the angels around us, right? All these people, these beautiful friends and family and community around us are here to support us through these times. And in that, as we get strength in that moment, then we start building our own strength and building it and building it. In Scripture, we see time and again of the prophets having to persevere and use their strength to make it through. We see Jesus time and again persecuted, and yet he keeps moving forward and moving through. And while there are many stories of Jesus' strength and perseverance, I wanted to go back to the Old Testament today a little bit. I wanted to share with you the story of Elijah on Mount Horeb when he goes to meet the Lord. Elijah here has just been through quite an ordeal, we'll put it that way. And he's seeking guidance. And even he, this wonderful prophet, this follower of the Lord, who's so in his heart knows that this is the way to go, feels for a moment that he's not strong enough to continue on. And in that moment, he hears a voice, and it's described here as the voice of the Lord, and the voice tells him, go to Mount Horeb, for the Lord is there. So this is in 1 Kings verses in chapter 19. So Elijah goes forward and is on this mission. And the Lord said, go out and stand on the mountain in the presence of the Lord, for the Lord is about to pass by. Now there's a whole lot just in this one line. The Lord said to go and wait for the Lord, and you're thinking, well, if he's already talking to me, why do I need to go anywhere? And yet in our lives, right, we can tune in to the ever-present Spirit, and yet sometimes we are guided and directed that there's something more we need to do. There's something we are being called to. So that's what's happening here. He's being called to something higher in his life. So he goes to the mountain, and a great and powerful wind tore the mountain apart and shattered the rocks before the Lord. But the Lord was not in the wind. After the wind, there was an earthquake, but the Lord was not in the earthquake. And after the earthquake came a fire, but the Lord was not in the fire. And after the fire came a gentle whisper. When Elijah heard it, he pulled his cloak over his face and went out and stood before the mouth of the cave. Then a voice said to him, what are you doing here, Elijah? So he has to persevere. And all of these things are happening to him. And we have two ways we can look at this story. And first, let's just look at it from the physical. Let's look at he's being called to go to this place, and he gets there, and poor guy, right? He's just been through this huge ordeal. He gets up to the top of the mountain, and there's winds and fires and earthquakes and everything, and he's still standing there and waiting for God. Waiting, because he was told to wait. And so he, in that instance, right, looking at it from the physical, it's that pure might, that physical might, just kind of digging your roots in and saying, I've got to do this. Whatever it is, whatever your mountain dream is, you got to do it because you're being called. You feel in your heart, this is what I need to do to get to whatever my next step is. I've got to be here right now, and I'm going to go through whatever I need to get to that next step. The other way we can look at the story is from a metaphysical perspective, right? Looking beyond the physical to the spiritual elements of the story. And as we do that, we can look at the mountain as being a spiritual place. So a place of spiritual enlightenment. And in Charles Fillmore's writing, he often says, in his book, The Revealing Word, the mountain is this high place of spiritual awareness. But in order for Elijah to get to that spiritual awareness, he has to clear things out. How often do we have an old belief, a limitation, a thought that I can't do this, that holds us back from ever starting the climb in the first place? In order to get to that high spiritual state, we have to allow things in our lives to be shaken up a little bit. We have to clear out the debris, so to speak. It's like a mental cleanse when we have to go in and detox those limitations and get to that point of, okay, I've emptied out my limitations. And so it's the wind is cleansing those limitations. The fire is burning away those old ideas that you can't be more than you currently are, that you can't show up in a new way, that you can't make it through. And as we persevere and we let the winds come through, we let things shake, we let the fires burn the old things away, then we are ready to hear the voice of God that is always whispering to us, that still small voice that when we turn in prayer and in meditation, it's there ready to guide us, to tell us what our next step is, how to continue with our strength, with our perseverance, that we can make it through. So as we look at how Elijah used strength, as we look at how Charles Fillmore has defined strength, and as we look at how my P's embodied strength, I ask you, how do you use strength in your life? What do you do when turbulence strikes? What do you do when the winds are blowing you everywhere and one of those strong storms come through? When you're shaken up? Despite whatever you've done in the past, I hope that as you move forward in the future, you'll look to the P's for some guidance and claim your strength. Claim that right now, right where you are, you have the strength to make it through whatever comes your way, whatever it is, that you can persevere through it, that you can rise above it, and as you rise above it, know yourself as the spiritual, capable being that you are. So you have 3 ways of identifying and grasping that strength, and the first is to dig in, set your roots in, hold on really tight. I kind of wish that first day that I had like a clear container, that the peas were in, because I want to see like what the roots were doing. I can only imagine that they were clinging in tighter, holding on to that soil, holding on to whatever's around them. I almost imagine like the roots growing out, like just within the hour, just like the tendrils were. In our lives, we can do that same thing. Something comes up that rocks us, maybe starts keeping us from going the distance, whether it's, a new diet or creating a new job for yourself. I just was at a party the other night and somebody said, I just went on this fantastic trip for 3 weeks and I came home and I quit my job. And everybody around her went, oh, what are you going to do now? And she said, I don't know, but I trust that that next step is going to unfold for me. I know that job was holding me back. That's not where I needed to be anymore. And she got that clarity by being away from it long enough, by going up to the mountain, by going through the wind, the winds and everything that cleared it, enough that she could say, this is what I need to do. So when those situations come to you and you say, I need to just make it through this, whatever it is, a health challenge, a challenge with a loved one, whatever it is, dig your roots in and say, I can do this. I got this. I got this. Know your own strength. Second, reach out to others. Reach out and say specifically, what can they do to help you? Because you know what? They want to help you. As I look around here today, I know, right? Even there are some new faces, and I know that if they said, you know what, I could really use a ride home today, somebody's got them covered. If somebody in here said, you know, I really could use $5 for whatever, you know, like my kid just got, I don't know, a dental bill that I can't afford, somebody's got it, right? Whether they're here in this community, your friends, your family, we all have so many built-in support systems all around us. Sometimes strangers even just reach out and help. But we need to say what we need. And our third thing that we need to do is pray, and pray again. Keep on praying. Keep on lifting your thoughts from this, right? From our physical experience, from the thoughts of whatever the situation is. Eric Butterworth once said, the answer isn't in the problem. And I always thought that was great, because how often do we get stuck? Here's the problem. Here's the problem. Here's the problem. Here's the problem. But the second that we can step out of that and raise our consciousness in prayer, in meditation, in turning to higher thought away from that, that's where we hear that still small voice. And that what is our next step? How do we maintain the strength through it is right there for us all the time. So as you move forward, whether there's a current challenge, current situation, or something comes forward for you in the next week, I invite you to think of the peas. Think of their roots hanging down. Think of their tendrils holding out to one another in community and support. And think of them holding on to that tomato cage for that ever-present, constant strength. And picture that as God right there with you all the time. Thank you so much. I see you all in strength and peace. Namaste.